Chapter 8, Supreme Penance, Uttam Tap. Acharya Jain, in his Sanskrit commentary of Acharya Kundakunda's popular work, Pravchan, named Tatparya has given the definition of penance as under: Samastaragadi parabhavecha tyagena swaswarupe pratapanam vijayanam tapaha. Having abandoned the desire of all sorts of attachments, etc., alien dispositions, and undergoing penance in the intrinsic nature of the self, that is, conquering the self, is true penance. The purport is that engrossing the self in the true nature of the self, that is, by the process of self-absorption, to achieve victory over the forces of evil, preceded by the abandonment of all sorts of attachments, etc., alien dispositions, is true penance. Acharya Amrit Chandra has also given a similar exposition in the Tattva Deepika commentary of Pravchan. In Dhavala, penance is defined as the obstruction of desires. Thus we see, from the negative point of view, the absorption in the self-nature is assuredly penance. The word Uttam prefixed with Tap indicates the existence of Samyak Darshan. Undergoing penance without acquiring right belief is totally worthless. It is said also, Samatta virahiya nam suttuvi uggam tavam charantanam na lahanti bohilaham avi vasa sahassa kodihim. If any jeev undergoes severe penances without right belief for crores of years, even then he cannot achieve the benefit of true knowledge and conduct. Similar sense has also been expressed by Pandit Daulat Ramji. कोटि जन्म तप तपे ज्ञान विन कर्म झरेजे ज्ञानी के छिन माही त्रिगुप्तिते सहज टरेते. The wrong believer who does not know the difference between the body and the soul undergoes severe penances, even then he cannot achieve liberation. In Samadhi Shatak, Acharya Pujyapad has written, Yo na vetti param deha devamatma namavyayam labhate na nirvanam taptvapi paramam tapaha. One who does not know the imperishable soul different from the body, even if undergoes severe austerities, does not attain moksha. Uttam Tap is a kind of right conduct, and without right belief and right knowledge, there can be no manifestation of right conduct. Without the Supreme Self, that is, without attaining the Supreme Reality in the form of pure self-consciousness, all sorts of austerities are mere childish austerities. Acharya Kundakunda has written in Samaysaar, Paramattam hi tu attido, jo kunadi navam vadam chadharedi, tam savvam baladavam, balavadam venti savvanu. If one performs austerities or observes vows without concentrated contemplation of the Supreme Self, that is, without realization of the pure Self, the Omniscient Lord treats all that as childish austerities and childish vows. In Janagam, the majesty of Uttam Tap has been described everywhere. In Bhagavati Aradhana, it is written even to this extent, Tam natti jam ana labbhai tavasa sammam kayena purisassa aggivatanam jaliyu kammattanam dahadiyatavaggi sammam kadassa aparissa Vassana phalam tavassa bannedum koi athi samathe jassavi jibha sayasahassam. In the world, there is no such thing which a person cannot obtain by faultless austerity. As the flamey fire burns the dry grass, similarly the fire of austerity burns the grass of karmic matter. Even the possessor of 1,000 tongues is not able to describe the fruits of righteously performed austerity, which is devoid of influx of karmas. Expressing the supremacy of austerity, the great poet Dhyanatraya has written, Tapa chahe surarai, karam shikhar ko vajra hai, dvadash vidha sukhadai, kyon na kare nijasakati sama, uttam tap sab mahi bakhana, karam shail ko vajra samana. In the above lines, penance has been mentioned twice as the destroyer of mountains of karmas. It is also said that Tap is liked even by the Lord of Dev and is the producer and provider of real happiness. Why should we, also have attaining the rare human birth, not perform it as per our capacity? Obviously, we ought to perform austerity as per our capacity. The point worth consideration is how would that tap be for which even the Lord of Dev aspires and which acts as an adamant to crush the mountain of karmas. Such penance cannot be limited only to keeping on fast for 2 to 4 days or to performing the external mortification of the body, etc. To have right understanding of the characteristics and limitations of supreme penance, deep study of the scriptures, contemplation and introspection are desirable. If only the name of not taking food is tap, why do then the Dev aspire for it? They can very easily relinquish food. They don't feel even the desire of taking food for thousands of years. This thing has already been explained in detail while discussing Sanyam. Penance has been divided into 2 categories. 1. External penance and 2. Internal penance. External penance is of 6 kinds. 1. Fasting. 2. Taking reduced diet. 3. Putting of special restrictions over and above the usual observances. 4. Abandoning food tastes. That is, the articles that make the food tasty: ghee, milk, curd, sugar, salt and oil. 5. Lonely habitation. And 6. Mortification of the body. Likewise, internal penance is also of 6 kinds. 1. Expiation. 2. Reverence. 3. Service. 4. Study. 5. Renunciation. 6. Meditation. Thus, total austerities are 12. In all the aforesaid austerities, whether external or internal, Shuddhopayog-based passionlessness predominates. The state of passionlessness in the form of Shuddhopayog, followed by the cessation of all sorts of desires, is real austerity. By indulgence in each kind of austerity, passionlessness should increase. Then only it is an austerity, otherwise not. In this context, the thoughts of Pandit Todarmal are worth paying attention. Fasting, etc., and expiation, etc., have been named tap, because by means of fasting, etc., and having done expiation, etc., the nourishment of the right austerity in the form of passionlessness is accomplished. Therefore, hypothetically, fasting, etc., and expiation, etc., have been called tap. If one does not know passionlessness or desirelessness as tap and indulges in them only, knowing them as tap, then he will only continue transmigration in the world. What more to say? Let this be understood that real religion is only passionlessness. The other various types of tap are called tap conventionally, being external means only. They are to be understood as religion merely from empirical point of view. The wise men have no keenness about fasting, etc. The only keenness is of Shuddhopayog. By fasting, etc., Shuddhopayog grows, so they observe fasting, etc. And if by fasting, etc., they find Shuddhopayog getting weak due to the weakness of the body or of thoughts, then in that condition, they agree to take food, etc. Question: if it is so, how did fasting and all get the name of tap? Answer: those have been called external austerities, and the meaning of external is this: it should appear externally to others that he is a recluse, but one will get the fruit according to one's internal feelings or thoughts, because the objectless activity of the body is not fruitful. The growth of internal austerity takes place in the company of fasting, etc., as these are external means. Hence, conventionally, these are called tap. But if someone performs the external austerities only and the internal austerity is not there, then conventionally also they cannot be termed as tap. And under the internal austerities, whatever activities of expiation, reverence, service, study, renunciation and meditation are there, the outward indulgence in them also is to be understood as external austerities. As fasting and so on are external activities, similarly these are also external activities. Hence, the external means of doing expiation and so on are not internal austerities. On performing such external activities, whatever purification of internal thoughts takes place, that is to be understood as internal austerity. Although internal austerity is the real austerity, external austerity is also conventionally termed as austerity. The indulgent in external austerities appears to be a great ascetic to the commoners. One of the two members of a house observed waterless fast for the whole day. He remained busy in the household activities only. The other one, although took meals twice, but for the whole day remained busy in spiritual study, reflection, contemplation, writing, reading, and teaching. The commoners will consider the fast observer as only ascetic, not the one who reads and teaches the scriptures. The polite behavior shown towards the fast observer will not be shown in the same measure to the one who reads and teaches. If he irritates on others, he too will be scolded. It will be said to him that he has eaten twice in a day, the other one observed fast. In each matter, priority will be given to the fast observer. Why does it happen so? Because the commoners believe him to be an ascetic, whereas he has done nothing. Observed fast means did not take food, did not drink water, but all this is done is only not done. What did he do positively? Nothing. Whereas the other one who studied, reflected, contemplated, read and taught has done something positively, be it external. All these are forms of swadhyaya only, and swadhyaya is also an austerity. But this ignorant world is not ready to accept him as an ascetic, because in its view, this does not appear as something done. Fasting is done only occasionally, but swadhyaya and dhyan are done daily. Swadhyaya and dhyan are internal austerities and are super excellent in all tap. Even then, this world gives more importance to those who observe fast and mortification of the body, etc., in comparison to those who do swadhyaya and dhyan. People make this type of difference even amongst the saints. They treat as much greater saints to those and bow very much before them who remain entangled in the worldly affairs but abstain from food even up to 10 days in comparison to those who remain engrossed in self-contemplation throughout day and night. Whereas Acharya Samantabhadra has defined a tapasvi as follows: Vishayashavashatito nirarambho aparigraha Jnana dhyana tapo raktah tapasvi sa prashasyate. The ascetic who has no desire for sensual pleasures has renounced all worldly activities, possessions and occupations and remains always engrossed in study, self-meditation and austerities, is praiseworthy. A question may arise as to why do we brand fasting as abstaining from food? Because people do not understand the right characteristics of fasting also. Simply abstaining from food and water is believed to be fasting, whereas fasting is the name of staying near the characteristics of the soul. Even if considered from the negative aspect, giving up of the objects of the five senses, passions and food has been termed as fasting. The remaining activities are mere abstaining from food. Kashaya vishayaharo tyago yatra vidhiyate upavasah savigyeyah shesham langhanakam viduhu. Thus, we see that staying near the characteristics of the soul and remaining absorbed in study and self-meditation, having given up the passions, objects of senses and food, is real fasting. But what about us? How much are our passions lessened on the day of fasting? It seems that on the day of fasting, our passions become fourfold. One more thing worth noting is that in the aforesaid 12 austerities, the second one in comparison to the first, the third in comparison to the second, and thus up to the last, the posterior austerities are more important and of greater significance. Fasting is the first austerity and meditation the last. If one meditates continuously for an Antarmuhurt, then assuredly he achieves omniscience. But if one observes fasting throughout the year, then there is no guarantee of achieving omniscience. This is the talk of real fasting and not of artificial fasting. The great ascetic Rishabdev, after accepting asceticism, lived then. Omniscience did not evolve up to 1,000 years, whereas Bharat Chakravarti achieved omniscience within one Antarmuhurt only just after accepting asceticism by the power of self-meditation. Reduced dieting in comparison to fasting, limiting the number of houses for begging food as compared to reduced dieting, giving up delicious dishes in comparison to limiting the number of houses for begging food are more and more important. To understand clearly this aspect, the general characteristics of these are worth noting. In fasting, the food is totally forsaken, but in reduced dieting, food is taken once. That is why it is also called ekashan, although in this food is taken once, yet not stomach full. Due to this, it is also called unodar. But nowadays, this has become dunodar instead of unodar, because in ekashan, people eat the rice food, which is sufficient for both the times and not for one time only. While going out for food, to take food only on the fulfillment of certain oaths, otherwise to observe fast, is called vritti parisankhyan. In the 6 types of tastes, eating tasteless food is called rasaparityag. All the aforesaid 4 austerities are concerned only with taking of food or giving up of food. Amongst these, the balanced control between the obstruction of desires and physical needs is worth noting. In these, there is a scientific gradual development. If possible, one should not take food at all. If one cannot remain without it, then it is better to take in reduced quantity and peacefully. Once and only in daytime, and that too under the ties of various restrictions and not unrestrained, and as far as possible. Food should be tasteless because delicious food increases voracity, though it should be enough to fulfill the needs of the body. Hence, all sorts of tastes should not be given up at a time, but on different occasions. Different types of tastes should be given up alternatively so that the physical needs are satisfied and restriction and voracity of tongue can also be observed. From this, it is clear that austerity is not the name of drawing out the body, but is the name of obstructing desires. Now the question worth considering is, why is unodar more important than anshan? When in anshan, food is not at all taken, and in unodar, lesser quantity of food in comparison to the intensity of appetite is taken once in a day. The obstruction of desires is more in giving up eating halfway, even though food has been tasted and is undisturbedly available, in comparison to keeping away from the food by keeping busy in other worldly affairs. Similarly, not to go to take food at all is one thing, but even after deciding to take food, not to accept it due to not getting food in accordance with the uncommon oaths taken is something different. In the latter case, the obstruction of desires is much more than in the former, and taking tasteless food even when tasty food is available is a further step in the direction of obstructing desires. In fasting, the restraining of stomach is comparatively more than restraining of the desires. In reduced dieting, etc., respectively, the restraining of desires is more than the restraining of stomach. Hence, the posterior austerities are respectively more important than fasting, etc., preceding ones. We have understood the cutting of the stomach as austerity, whereas the Acharya has termed the cutting of desires as austerity. In the aforesaid austerities, complete control over the sense of tongue is maintained with an eye on bodily health. The Acharyas have emphasized giving up of tastes alternately rather than relinquishing any special taste for the whole life. This very feeling predominates the hypothesis of giving up different tastes on different days. Example, not taking salt on Sunday, not taking ghee on Monday, and etc. By taking one type of taste for 6 days and not taking the same for 1 day, there will be no deficiency in the essential elements required for the body, and the prominence of taste will also go away. If any person leaves salt or ghee for the whole life, then in the beginning for some days he will find the food tasteless, but later on he will start drawing taste in the same food. Health may also be spoiled due to the deficiency of that particular element in the body. But having taken for 6 days, even if salt or ghee is not taken for a day, there will be no physical deterioration at all, but the food will become tasteless. The tongue will also be brought under control. A saint observed fasting for 1 month. Thereafter, he stirred out to take food. Even on getting faultless food without any obstruction, he took only 1 morsel of food and went back. Again, he observed fasting for 1 month. This is the highest example of unodar. The ignorant person will argue that when fasting for 2 months was to be observed, why did he take the blame of eating by taking only 1 morsel of food? If he would not have taken that 1 morsel, he would have created a record of 2 months fasting. The ignorant person remains always busy in making and breaking records. There is no need of making or breaking records for the sake of religion or for observing religious penance. By records, only haughtiness is strengthened. The aspirant of pride remains busy only in making records. Why should a religious person too indulge in record making? The saint did not break the fast by going to take food, but he certainly conquered the feeling of haughtiness likely to arise due to fasting. He went to take food after 1 month only because he wanted to know whether the desire which he wanted to annihilate by fasting has been annihilated or not, or even weakened or not. Even on getting food without any obstruction, he felt it after taking only 1 morsel of food and came back. By this, he could know that the destruction of the desire has taken place to a great extent. Lying down, sitting in postures, etc., without recklessness in lonely places which are free from insect afflictions, in the austerity of lonely habitation, and not to worry because of bodily pains and sufferings to be faced deliberately or caused by others, in achieving the spiritual goal of self-adoration is the austerity called mortification of body. In this context, the thing worth noting is that giving pain to the body is not austerity, but not to be slack in the observance of self-adoration due to bodily pain and sufferings is the important thing. The main purpose of performing austerities is to strengthen the state of passionlessness by restraining of desires. Any austerity, so long as it accomplishes the aforesaid purpose, is till then only the real austerity. The discussion so far in brief has been about the external austerities. In these, each needs to be discussed in detail separately, for which there is no occasion here. Now, in short discussion on some of the internal austerities is desirable. Amongst the internal austerities, about which various types of misconceptions are prevalent, the austerity of reverence is one such austerity. Whenever talk on the austerity of reverence is held, the indiscipline existing in the present time is censured. Complaints against the modern generation are lodged. It is said that no feeling of reverence exists in the youngsters of the present time. These people neither touch the feet of the teacher nor of the parents. I don't say that parents should not be respected. The necessary respect should be paid to the parents, teachers, and other holy persons. What I want to emphasize is that reverence to the parents is not the austerity of reverence, because austerity is observed by the saints and parents are renounced before accepting asceticism. Reverence to parents, etc., is a temporal reverence, whereas in context of the austerity of reverence, non-temporal, that is religious or spiritual reverence, is to be considered. The austerity of reverence is not found in the so-called wretched householders who bow down their heads anywhere, but it is found in the saints who do not bow to anybody except the Panchaparmeshthis, namely, like Arahant omniscient Lord with corporeal body, the Siddha omniscient Lord without body, the chief preceptor, the preceptor, and the ascetic. Bowing irrationally hither-thither is not the austerity of reverence, but it is Vainaik Mithyatva. Reverence in itself is an extremely holy and high stage of the soul. If performed at the right place, it takes the form of an austerity, but if done at wrong dose, it becomes the cause of infinite mundane existence. Reverence is the highest religion, the highest virtue, and also the highest sin. Reverence in the form of an austerity is the highest religion. In the form of Vinay Sampannata amongst the 16 contemplations is the cause of influx of Tirthankarnam karma, the highest virtue. And in the form of Vinay Mithyatva, the cause of infinite mundane existence, it is the highest sin. In the performance of reverence, a great deal of care is essential. It may happen that what you consider to be Vinay Tap may come out to be Vinay Mithyatva. You have to be very careful in this matter so that in the name of Vinay Tap or Vinay Sampannata, you do not increase the infinite mundane existence by indulging in Vinay Mithyatva. If the observance of reverence is done at the right place, then it being an austerity will cut the karmas. But if performed at wrong place, it being a fallacious veneration will cut the religion itself. This is a sword which, though set in motion on one's own head, cuts the head of the enemies, provided it is used properly. If used wrongly, it may also cut one's own head, hence it should be used with great care. Our head is not a rotten coconut which may be broken anywhere. Where to bow and where not to bow, one who does not know even this much discrimination will not get the benefit even by bowing at the right place, because only an act performed with discriminating attitude gets success. Acharya Samantabhadra did not bow down to the all-knowing Lord without examining. If one does not care for the value of his own head, who else in the world will care for it? Bowing and indulging in false praise has nowadays become a common practice. People say if we will revere or praise others, then others will reciprocate. What, and bow before them for getting praise? Why do we desire praise from the world? If in the divine speech of Bhagwan Janendra, the word Bhavya comes for a person, it is a guarantee for eternal bliss. What praise would be bigger than this? But what is achieved even if the whole world calls us Bhagwan? By nature, we all are Bhagwan, but one who calls us Bhagwan in the present embodied state of existence from the modification point of view has not made us Bhagwan, but has only exposed his own ignorance. Reverence is a very precious thing. It should not be pulled down to such a low level. Reverence is that austerity by which nirjara and moksha take place. Can it be accomplished by flattery? No, never. If simply bowing down at the feet of others and offering them salutation is the austerity of reverence, why would then the deities earnestly long for it? What could be the difficulty for them in bowing down before anybody? Why do then the scripturalists say that they are not capable of any austerity? Not only the name of bowing down before the parents is not the austerity of reverence, but even bowing before the true God, the true holy scriptures and the true saint is also not Vinay Tap from the real point of view. This of course is called Upchar Vinay. Vinay Tap is of 4 kinds. 1. Gyan Vinay, 2. Darshan Vinay, 3. Charitra Vinay, 4. Upchar Vinay. Under Upchar Vinay, some people include reverence to parents, etc., but this is not correct. Gyan Vinay is the true and real reverence, and reverence to the wise scripturalists is Upchar Vinay. Darshan Vinay is the true and the real reverence, and reverence to the true believers is Upchar Vinay. Thus, reverence for right knowledge, faith and conduct in the true and real reverence, and reverence towards those dev and saints who possess these virtues is Upchar Vinay. Vinay Tap is a kind of Tap Dharma, the pity of austerity, hence its upchar can also be possible only in the holy personages and not in the common men. Simply bowing down one's head in someone's feet is not Vinay Tap. A deceitful person bows outwardly to such an extent that maybe a real polite person possibly may not be found bowing to that extent. Hence we are not concerned with external reverence but with real humility. Vinay is an internal austerity. The snapping of persons bowing down externally is possible but not of those bowing internally. Vinay Tap is the name of the feeling of endless reverence in the inner self for the right knowledge, faith, conduct, and the aspiration for achieving it. Reverence in the form of external salutation can be seen only sometimes, but the feeling of internal reverence exists always. Hence, Vinay Tap, that is reverence for right knowledge, faith, conduct, is always found in the great holy saints. People have a lot of misconceptions about the austerity of Vaiyavritya too. Only attending on saints and massaging their legs, etc. is considered as Vaiyavritya. Here, one question may arise as to whether doing Vaiyavritya is austerity or getting Vaiyavritti from others is austerity, that is, rendering bodily help to others is austerity, or taking service, bodily help from others is austerity. If rendering bodily help to others is austerity, then the householder who renders bodily help to saints would be the observer of Vaiyavritya, and not the saint taking bodily help. But the saint is called Tapasvi and not the householder. These 12 austerities are also primarily meant for the saints. If taking bodily help from others is austerity, who will not accept such an austerity? Others render bodily help to us, and by taking such help we become tapasvi. What could be better than this? Without applying our mind, we have been rendering bodily help to the saints, believing that we are doing Vaiyavritti and will surely get some good result from this activity. And side by side, we have also been believing that Vaiyavritti Tap is found in the saints. It is true that Vaiyavritti means service, but mere massaging of legs is not service. In Vaiyavritti, legs are also massaged, but only massaging the legs is not called Vaiyavritti. Service is for both, to the self and to others. True service is to engage the self and others in spiritual beneficence. Spiritual beneficence consists in living in the state of pure consciousness, that is, passionlessness. To make ceaseless efforts for living in the state of dispassionateness only is real Vaiyavritti. If due to some disease, etc., the mind of the self or the other fellow saint is not absorbed in tranquility, then helping him to get peace of mind by massaging legs, etc., is also Vaiyavritti. But without any such reason, massaging the legs or getting one's legs massaged for comfort can never be called Vaiyavritti. And even if it is named as such, it cannot be treated as an austerity and in no case an internal austerity. If a saint is groaning due to terrific pain and the peace of his mind is disturbed, then in such a condition, mere sermons will not help him manifest a feeling of peace. But if he is sermonized and also rendered bodily help, then acquirement of tranquility is possible quickly. This is the only reason why rendering bodily help finds a place in the austerity of Vaiyavritya. While pondering over reverence and austerity of service, we ought not to forget that these are internal austerities. Simply connecting these with external activities is not proper. Swadhyay is also an internal austerity. Swadhyay has been proclaimed as the highest austerity. But nowadays, after getting up in the morning, first of all, we busy ourselves in doing Swadhyay of the newspapers. Reading anything from here and there is not Swadhyay. Even studying, reflecting, contemplating of the spiritually benedictive Shastras is only conventionally called Swadhyay. Real Swadhyay is to acquire the right self-knowledge. Swa Adhi I. Swa means of the self, Adhi means knowledge, and I means to acquire. Thus, acquiring knowledge of the self only is Swadhyay. The knowledge of Par is Paradhyay. Although teaching, questioning, etc. are mentioned as kinds of Swadhyay, nevertheless, reading, questioning of anything unsystematically, this way or that way, is not Swadhyay. After deciding what to read, how to read, what and how to ask, that is rational indulgence in teaching, reading, questioning, etc. only are called Swadhyay. We go to the temple. Whatever Shastra is available, we read hurriedly 2-4 lines from the same, from any page opened at random, and we finish the Swadhyay. That too is done because earlier some saint had administered an oath to us for doing Swadhyay daily. This is assuredly no Swadhyay. Where do we have that interest for doing Swadhyay of the spiritual books, which we have for reading the passion-stimulating literature, which only contains descriptions of the objects of the 5 senses? Very few persons are there who would have done Swadhyay of the spiritual, doctrinal or philosophical books right from the beginning to the end. The ordinary persons do not do Swadhyay regularly and concentratedly. Even such learned persons are few who do Swadhyay of some important work concentratedly and thoroughly. If we cannot study any books completely from the beginning to the end, how would it be possible to reach to its depth or touch its essence? When we don't have even the interest to read it completely, how would then the complete nature of the subject discussed therein get absorbed in our knowledge and faith? We may have never left incomplete the reading of novels, etc., which only strengthen the objects of the senses and passional activities. We halt only after finishing it, and are even prepared to miss our meal for completing it. Have we, any time, forgotten taking food, being engrossed in the study of spiritual literature? If not, then take it for granted that our interest is not that much deep in metaphysics as it is in the objects of the senses and passions. According to the law, Ruchi Anuyayi Virya, our whole energy is directed towards the objects of our interest. For achieving even conventionally the Swadhyay Tap, we will have to create a unique interest in the spiritual literature. Swadhyay Tap has been divided into 5 categories. 1. Reading and teaching, Vachana. 2. Questioning, Prachana. 3. Reflection, Anupreksha. 4. Recitation, Amnai. 5. Preaching, Dharmopadesh. In these, the gradual development of the process of Swadhyay is reflected. A study in the first instant of the spiritual books dealing with the principles of realities and the essence of the soul and drawing out the gist from it according to one's wisdom with full concentration is called Vachana Swadhyay. Even after such study, if some point is not understood properly, then holding discussion with knowledgeable persons with the object of clearing our doubts or strengthening our knowledge is called Prachana Swadhyay. To ponder and contemplate seriously on whatever has been studied and whatever is learned from the learned persons in answer to our questions is called Anupreksha Swadhyay. After reading, questioning and contemplating, for firm retention to read and recite again and again the topics which have been rightly understood is Amnai Swadhyay. Delivering discourses on the subject for the benediction of others after the particular subject is thoroughly understood as a result of reading, questioning, contemplation and recitation is called Dharmopadesh Swadhyay. From the above interpretation, it is inferred that mere reading is not Swadhyay, but putting questions to others after understanding the subject correctly with the object of self-beneficence is also Swadhyay. Contemplation and recitation are also parts of Swadhyay. Even preaching done with the object of one's own and others' beneficence and without any greed of fame and name, etc., is also Swadhyay Tap. As would be clear from above, there is a necessary seriality in all the different kinds of Swadhyay Tap. Nowadays, we have forgotten that seriality. We start putting questions without reading the Shastras. It is due to this reason that our questions are uncorrelated and confusing. Unless we ourselves make deep study of any subject, how could deep questions connected with it arise? Many questions are also put up only for testing others' knowledge. Such questions do not come under Prachana Swadhyay. About those who always put questions only for testing others' wisdom, the great poet Pandit Banarasi Das ji has written, Par nari sang par buddhi ko parakhivo. The question should be raised only with a sense of respect and for satisfying one's curiosity. Trying to catch the wordings of the speaker arrogantly is surely no Swadhyay Tap, but it is a mean act of showing disrespect to Janvani. The habit of contemplation has almost disappeared from our life. Though recitation is done but without following its meaning, more repetition is done, even that too incorrectly. Many mothers and sisters who daily listen to the recitation of Bhaktamar and Tattvarth Sutra work in nutshell and Tattvarth Sutra when even do not know as to how many chapters are there in that book. The question of understanding the subject matter expounded in it does not arise. From some saint they have taken the oath that without listening to the recitation of Sutra, they would not take meals, therefore they are just carrying it on like a burden. Real recitation is that which is preceded by reading, questioning and contemplation. After grasping the essence of the subject matter, recitation is done with the object of preserving it in the mind. The place of preaching comes at the end in the seriality of other kinds of Swadhyay. But nowadays, we want to be a preacher first, without implementing the sequence of reading, questioning, contemplating and recitation. The listeners to the sacred preachings also do not seem to be alert about this. In the name of sacred preachings, anybody may address them about anything. They only have to listen, so they listen. They do not bother about the preacher and the preachings. Here, I put an example. If we want to get our stomach operated, would we get it done by anybody without knowing the details of the operator and the operations? No, we try to gather complete information about the doctor. The doctor too does not get ready easily to do the work in which he is not an expert. The question of operating a part, even if we want to get a shirt stitched, we try to search an expert tailor, and the tailor too, if does not know the stitching of a shirt, might refuse to stitch it. But the scope of religion is made so wide open that anybody without understanding and knowing the truth or reality gets ready to preach, and he also finds listeners. In fact, the point is that we don't take it all seriously the preaching and listening activity, but just allow it to pass on lightly. We must not forget that Dharmopadesh is also an austerity, that too internal. We take it as a game. We must recognize its significance, should try to understand the seriousness of preaching and listening to discourses, should not treat it a thing of entertainment and for passing time. This is my humble request to all. In the first chapter of Moksha Marga Prakashak, the great savant Pandit Todarmal has explained in detail the real characteristics of preachers and listeners of Chinwani. Sincere readers should quieten their curiosity from there. Swadhyaya is an austerity in which are incorporated not only the virtues of other kinds of austerities, but besides it is an infallible means of enhancement of knowledge. Also, there is no specific difficulty and restriction in Swadhyaya. One can do Swadhyaya any time in the day or in the night. Ladies, gents, children, old and young all can do and should do Swadhyaya. Just start doing Swadhyaya regularly and you will yourself come to know the boundless advantages it has in store. Expiating through self-confession, repentance, etc. for removal of sins and transgressions committed by negligence or under the influence of passions is called the austerity of expiation. The giving up of the external and internal possessions and occupations is called renunciation. A detailed exposition of this will be done in the forthcoming chapters on Tyag and Akinchanya. Now, what is left is a little discussion about meditation. Meditation is the highest austerity. The attainment of omniscience takes place in the state of meditation only. Here, the word meditation is not used in connection with the painful and the cruel meditation, nor in connection with the virtuous meditation, that is, absorptness in auspicious feelings, but is used in connection with that pure meditation, Shuddhopayog, which acts as the fire in the burning fuel of karmas. The definition of which Acharya has given in the 9th chapter of Tattvartha Sutra is under Uttam Sahananasya Kagra Chinta Nirodho Dhyanamantar Muhurtat. Generally speaking, a shopkeeper has always in mind the consumer and a doctor who has in mind the patient. The spouse also thinks about one another. All these always do the so-called meditation, but simply the concentration of thought in one particular object is not the austerity of meditation, but the concentration of thought on the self only is the austerity of meditation. The concentration of thought on any particular object is also called meditation, but it is not the austerity of meditation. Dhyan Tap consists only in turning the thought away from all other non-self things, the object of senses, and the impure thought activities by fixing it on the self only. If the state of meditation in the form of Shuddhopayog persists up to an Antar Muhurt, then omniscience gets manifested in the soul. The essence of all kinds of austerities is the austerity of meditation. For the accomplishment of this only, all other remaining austerities are observed. My prayer in concluding this discussion is that all souls may attain supreme Godhood through the instrumentality of this sacred Dhyan Tap.